All right, let's jump into it. I don't have a lot to talk about on markets. I think it's been a lot of the same back and forth stuff. People talking about tariffs, people talking about this, that, and the other thing. The one maybe topic I do want to pull up again is, our resident macro GCR Felix had dropped his own piece on related to Bitcoin and macro and other things. And I'm seeing talk that we saw a few weeks back around BTC decoupling from equities or US equities. I'm seeing that crop up again. Like the stock market is down today and Bitcoin is up. So people are kind of reiterating that point. I guess I'm curious, what are you guys' thoughts here? I think we've talked on this point a little bit, but I just want to know what people are thinking.
Yeah, shout out to Felix for the perfectly timed report, thesis, whatever you want to call it, on Bitcoin outperforming US equities. I think what makes this a little different, like this decoupling from the last one where it lasted for like maybe a day, is in that time the S&P and US equities were dumping pretty significantly and Bitcoin was just kind of staying stagnant or not dropping as much, whereas now today I look at the charts and the S&P is down over 2.5% and Bitcoin's up over 2.5%. So to me this is a pretty meaningful swing in this direction. I think it comes from specifically Trump's comments, or I guess his Truth Social post, where I guess the gist or the TLDR is US dollar down. And so people are basically buying gold hand over fist as if they already weren't doing that. And then Bitcoin, I guess, is sort of coupled within this trade. So that's what I'm seeing at least.
I default to Felix for all macro takes. I've been so tuned into crypto. I say this every podcast, but I've just been so plugged into crypto over the last 3-ish years that I got no meaningful LARPing to do.
I would say that the as someone who used to do macro no longer does, it's definitely interesting. You've had now 2 days where Bitcoin goes up when markets go down. I think that that's pretty interesting. For a lot of my career, if you could look at prices today and how they were behaving and really understand what was happening tomorrow, um, with a reasonable degree of certainty. I think that the problem with what Bitcoin is trying to achieve, rather than just like what changing beta between sectors and countries and instruments and asset classes, um, is that Bitcoin is trying to, or at least the proponents of it want it to be this like risk off asset when it has historically been anything but. There is a huge behavior change that needs to happen for that to succeed. It would be the most profound shift that I'm aware of in markets. It like, we've all seen this shift in markets where the long bonds stopped working in risk off environments. And it's like kind of not worked. I mean, it's definitely not worked, but the degree it's like, okay, it's like it's off a little. 60/40 is kind of broken. You would really need a change in buyer behavior. Um, from an asset that used to go down 70% in recessions to an asset that goes up in recessions is a huge ask. So I think while it's potentially promising, I think, it's still like, show me. It's still, Bitcoin has to prove that out.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think there's a timing thing at play here, right? Even looking back a few weeks, it's people start getting out the decoupling posts, and then a few days later, I think maybe there's some lag effect to that price action relative to the rest of the market. And we see this in other ways with Bitcoin and crypto relative to other markets where moves happen on the weekends or like off hours, and then the week comes into play, and then you see another move or like a more concentrated move or something to rebalance the activity that was occurring on the weekend, whatever it may be. So to Ryan's point, I guess at least I think we'll need more time to see like a verification of this idea if it's really decoupling or happening at all.
And you have to see, it's important when shit hits the fan. Like those are the moments where you need the thing to work for you. I think long bonds, if shit hits the fan, if you start seeing like runs on banks and financial institutions rolling over, then you probably, although long bonds haven't worked, like you'll start to see them work in that way because that'll be a very deflationary force. I mean, you got to think all the counterparty risk that is existent in Bitcoin, and all that leverage in that system. Like, I really doubt that Bitcoin becomes this risk off asset when you go through a March of 2020 or a 2008 or something like that.
We'll have to see. Hopefully, we don't have to go through a March of 2020 again anytime soon, but you never know with the way Trump and associates have been acting and the way the markets have been responding to that.